Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. This is a learner success story with Codecademy. My name is Elisa Vigil. I'm the community manager. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. This is a learner. That can happen. There is a delay when talking with you all, so that's actually something to know. This will be an interactive session. We are here to meet Kate McFall, who is calling in from the West Coast today. I am sitting at Codecademy headquarters in New York City. We are so glad to be here. I would love to find out where you all are from. So just give us a shout out, give us a hello in the chat box. Introduce yourselves. Let us know what it is that you're hoping to learn from today. Kate, hello.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kate McFall. I am a software developer. Specifically, right now, I am a full stack application developer. So I build cool apps.
That's fantastic. How long have you been building cool apps?
Well, I started teaching myself how to program about 15 years ago. So there was no Codecademy, there was no Stack Overflow, there wasn't even GitHub at that time. So what I did was I looked up college courses and I looked to see what their textbooks were, and then I'd buy the textbooks and read them. So things have gotten a lot easier now with things like Codecademy, where you have interactive tutorials. But yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been building websites for about that long and just kept learning and kept getting new languages under my belt.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so 15 years of learning for yourself. How did you even how did it begin for you? How did you learn that this was something you were interested in way back when?
I was just curious. Like, I just didn't know how websites showed up on the page, and I just was curious. And the first book I got was a kid's library book, and just on HTML. I just had my first baby. I think I was a little bored, and I just read this little kid's library book about HTML, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then I got my first college textbook, and then I just started going from there. I just wanted to know how it worked. And then the more I built, the more like, well, I wish my site could do this. And so then I would just keep learning new things. But I just started because I just didn't know how it worked and I wanted to know.
I like you use the word curious, and I think that we could probably spend an entire session talking about curiosity and like what a prerequisite that is for taking on this work. But it's also it's a fantastic through point, I think, for all of the people that I've spoken to, that I'm so grateful to have spoken to for the Learner Success Series. Everybody has that in common. Everybody's curious.
I think it's a really good skill as a developer, like that you want to know how something else works. Like, I could build something in one way with one language, but kind of being curious, is there another way to do this? How could I incorporate in this other environment? And just, I think that's really how I gained a lot of the knowledge that I have. Just like, oh, I wonder if I could do this instead, and just keep going from there.
It's fantastic. So when did Codecademy make its way into your education?
I want to say it was probably pretty early on in Codecademy's life. I had been doing this for a while at that point, but as a self-taught programmer, I had some insecurities. Like, I just, you don't know what you don't know. And so I didn't know, like, maybe there are huge gaps in my knowledge, and I just didn't know that I needed to fill those in with something. And so it was really nice to be able to go back and do some courses for languages that I had learned and was using for a long time. And hey, are there things I don't know about? Are there cool tricks? And it really helped my confidence as a programmer to have some real courses under my belt. Like, okay, if I know everything that this course is saying, then that's a really good, that made me feel a lot more confident in my skills. So I started by doing courses for languages I already knew. And then I started, you know, picking up new ones from there. And then the latest one I did was the React one. I think it's the Build Web APIs from scratch, the Pro Intensive.
Yes.
That was really, really fun. I had just had my last baby, and I was a little kind of unmotivated, not unmotivated, because I was really itching to get back into things, but a little sort of lost for direction. And you know, with a baby can be overwhelming. It was my third kid, and having that course and the timeline and the group and the deadlines really helped kind of put me back on track, and it was really, really fun.
I'm so happy that that was a good experience. I'm so happy. For anybody who's signing in right now, Kate was just talking about intensives. Intensives are something that Codecademy offered and learned so much from. They've recently been repackaged into what we are calling skill paths, and skill paths are really focused around an outcome, like the intensives were. And in this case, in your case, Kate, it was React API, or APIs with React, and now it's this so much of the same content that is outcome focused on your schedule. So we are, if anybody here is interested, oh, we have a 30% off annual plan code that I would be very happy to share with everybody. Check it out in the comments. And you'll be able to check out Skill Pass. I'd love to hear from folks what you think about. Next question for Kate. Oh, and just for everybody who is on, the first part of this chat will be just some questions from myself for everybody here, and then I will dive into your questions. So please do share them with us in the chat. What was your goal, Kate, when you first started with Codecademy?
I think that imposter syndrome is a big deal, and just kind of gaining my confidence and feeling more confident to go out and build things for other people. Like, I loved building projects for myself, but there was this huge like anxiety, insecurity about going to someone else and saying, you know, I really do know these languages and I really can build this thing for you. And so I think that was probably, you know, why I really started. My goal in the beginning was to get over some of that insecurity.
And how are we feeling about that now? For everybody who's here, Kate is a cheerleader for other people. Kate is also, I'm really inspired by how you regularly say, I really almost messed this one up, but no, I didn't. How would you say that your relationship with your own self-esteem is right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. I for 3 months I got a job, like a real proper developer job 3 months ago, and you know, I had a few moments there when I get a new project, like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then, you know, an hour later I knew what I was doing. But you know, I'm feeling really good about my skills. I'm feeling really, really comfortable not knowing what I'm doing and knowing I can figure it out. And so even when I get in that point where I don't even know where I'm going to start in this project, I feel okay. I can handle it. I've figured it out before. I'll figure it out again.
This contagious positivity. Thank you. Okay. Oh, general advice time. What would you share to somebody who this is their first day on Codecademy?
Keep building. Always be building. Just keep building projects. Build little projects. They can be tiny. They can do one thing. They can be bigger projects, but don't just like go through the HTML course and then put it away and say, I know HTML, and now you're moving on. Keep using it. I think it's one thing to go through a course, and it's another thing to apply what you've learned. So just keep building projects. Build lots of them. Build dumb ones, build pretty ones, build big ones. Just keep building, and that's going to really solidify a lot of your knowledge. You know, they say that one really good way to learn something is by teaching somebody else. I also think when you apply that knowledge, whether you're teaching somebody or building a project, it kind of cements it in your head. Like, oh, how did I do that in that class? Oh, it's like this. And the more you build, I think the more it just becomes second nature, that stuff is just going to fly off your keyboard and into the program.
It's fantastic. I'll make sure that yeah, that's fantastic advice. Coming from, well, from my own experience being in and around education for so long, and working with teachers as I did, I hear that, and I'm so happy to see it being applied here in this community too. Taking the time to teach somebody else works both ways. We get to learn it too. Thanks for sharing that. Now into more of the nitty gritty. So I know that you took the intensive. Had you taken any other courses, either on Codecademy or elsewhere online?
I've taken a lot of Codecademy courses. I went back earlier to see which ones they probably were, and I think like HTML, CSS, Ruby, Git, probably the SAS one, just a lot of things over time I've taken on Codecademy. But there was one point when I was considering a boot camp because I wanted the job support. They don't get paid until you get a job. So I felt like that would be a lot of support in getting a job. But then I just figured that I'd be paying a lot of money to relearn a lot of things I already knew. And I decided to do it on my own. And there was one project several years ago. I don't know what state it's in right now, but it was called the Odin Project. I did that. And that was did a lot with JavaScript and Ruby on Rails. And then I've done a bunch of Udemy courses, just video courses, like, a quick thing. I was doing one thing I needed to know what TypeScript was, and I found this like little half-hour free TypeScript course on Udemy. So just a bunch of little things I could find elsewhere.
I'm gonna share a statement, but it is actually a question. It sounds to me like prior to reaching these courses online and finding these courses online, like that little half-hour one, for example, you'd already learned how to learn. Like you already knew that when you learned something new, you would need to go over it a few times, and then you need to go apply it, and then you probably need to go into an online community and go talk about it. Is that an accurate read?
Yeah, I think so. To back up a little bit, I think to figure out what I wanted to learn next, if I was building something and enough times, like I'd look up, how should I do this? How should I do that? And if enough times the answer was a certain language or a certain skill or a certain whatever, then I'd take that as a sign like, okay, I think I need to learn this, whatever this is. And then I'd go learn it and I'd apply it into my program. And then I think if I really liked it and really enjoyed it and thought I'd want to move forward, then I'd look for a course and to kind of flesh out my knowledge about it, instead of just applying it like using jQuery to make a sortable list, make the sortable list with jQuery, but now take a course in jQuery, and then, build out more projects with jQuery, something along that path.
That's an incredible process, what you just shared. Because I see that question a lot. Hey, what do I learn next? And how do I know what to learn next? Like, I've never heard that process before. That's ingenious.
I've seen that question a lot too. What do I do next? What projects do I build? And I feel like I can't tell you what projects to build. Like I can't say, go to this site and build these 4 projects and now you're going to be a well-rounded developer. I think the more, and that starts with that always be building. The more you're building, the more you're going to bump up against the boundaries of what you know. And the more you're going to push those boundaries a little more and kind of find your own way. Like if you are doing a lot of web design. And okay, this was actually my story. I was doing a lot of web design and it was fine. Like it's fine to make static websites. That's fine. It was fine. Everything's fine. But I found myself like, what else can this do? I want to store my own data. I want to interact with this site. And that's, I bumped up against that boundary. Where do I put this data so it lives? And then, databases, which then moved into, SQL and stuff like that. And like, now I need to work with data. And so I kind of moved, this was my sphere of knowledge. And then I kind of moved it this way insight into like backend stuff and database stuff. And nobody could have told me, well, you need to learn HTML, CSS, and then SQL. And then, that was my own path, which I found by building and found by bumping up against what I didn't know and learning how to, build the things I want to do. And so now I have this job where, I'm a full stack developer. So I do a lot of front end stuff, but I also interact with a lot of stuff in the database and, build these applications that interact with our database, the user, and so that was the path that I naturally, organically found for myself. And no one could have told me to do it that way.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I see, I just repeating myself, like I see that question fly around so much, and very rarely do we get such a succinct answer like that. And you you created a picture. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I think that's the end of my questions, but we've got some really fantastic ones coming through from the chat right now. So I will start sharing them. From Ezekiel Noafor, what was your learning routine like? How many hours a day did you spend learning a topic? And there's a part two to that question, but I think that just even starting there, like what was your learning routine like, and how many hours a day did you spend learning a topic?
Well, I don't know if this is common, but I get really obsessed with something when I'm starting to learn it. And so for like 2 weeks, I would just throw myself into that language because I couldn't stop. Like, I'd learn one thing. Well, what if you do this thing? And then I couldn't go to bed until I learned that next thing. But then there was always something else. And so I would say in the beginning for the first couple weeks, I get very focused and that's what I'm doing for I have to remind myself to pee and eat and, do all that kind of stuff. But that's what I'm doing for a couple weeks. And then after that, I know now, like I used to feel bad, like, oh no, the house is getting messy and I can't, I know now for 2 weeks, this is what I'm doing. Everything, will be fine. We'll all survive. And then after that, when I start building with it, I'll get back to my normal routine and everyone will be happy again. But that's sort of my routine is I spend a lot of time up front, just learning, like obsessively learning. And then I can kind of back off for a little bit.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's really similar to a question from Junie Santalis. The person asked, if you don't mind sharing, and sorry if I'm interrupting, how do you structure your days to balance so many priorities? 3 kids, they say, because it's really impressive what you accomplished. That's coming from Junie, not me, even though I feel that way, but so does Junie.
Organization. Like I was so organized, about some of my stuff here. I would write it all down. I have a weekly spread, and I just say I have to take care of these tasks on Monday, these tasks on Tuesday. And every week I would kind of plan out my week. And I knew that helped me know, like, these are the things I have to take care of. And then the rest of the time is mine. And so I could, kind of balance a little better the work family scenario there when I wanted to do 100 million things. I could kind of see like, okay, I got to get these things done and then I can move on to these other things.
Okay. Sorry about that. Going back and forth between the chat and here. Thank you for that. So how long did it take? This is a question from Lisa Reynolds. How long did it take you after beginning Codecademy before you got your first job?
Okay, a long time. And mostly because I wasn't looking for a job. Like I wasn't trying to be a corporate developer for a long time. I was very happy to build my own projects. I was very happy to take on clients. And it took about, it didn't take very long. Once I decided I wanted to get a job, it didn't take very long. I get this next question a lot, so I'll just ask it and answer it. But how do you get a job is one thing I see a lot. And so my process, once I realized I'd kind of done a whole lot on my own, and the next step for me was to get a corporate job and learn from a team and grow from there. I made a portfolio site. So I put all my projects that put your projects on GitHub so they're easier to find later. Do that, do that, do that. But they were all on GitHub, so I could pull them down and put them onto a portfolio site. Wasn't anything fancy. It was really, really basic. In fact, I teach a 3-day course every year at the high school. I go in and I teach the AP computer science kids how to build a portfolio website. And my site is pretty much exactly what I teach these high schoolers to use. So it's not fancy. It's not like, oh my God, you're going to be wowed by this thing I put together. That's not the point. The point is the projects on there. So build a portfolio website and then get yourself a LinkedIn and fill it out as much as you can. Put your courses on there, put the languages you know on there, put your favorite projects on there. And once I always had this thing like, well, I love to program. How do I turn this into a job? Like, I just don't even know how to go about doing that. Once I got a LinkedIn account, I was getting contacted by recruiters constantly. And I spent the better part of a year not answering those, kind of getting myself ready. Like, okay, if I'm going to get a corporate job, I'd like to get this and this and this done first. And I'd like to finish learning this area and like to finish this project. And so I worked on that for a while. And then I started talking to some of those recruiters and like, the ones that really interested me, like just the ones that I really liked. And, I talked to them, see if I wanted to move forward. And once I did start moving forward, I got the second job that I applied for, and I love it so much. So for me, the time between starting Codecademy, starting my learning, and getting a job was a really long one, but just because that's how I wanted to do it.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing the bit about recruiters. I feel like, again, that's like a little bit like a seed of an entire other session at some point too. Um, but I really like the point that you shared. It's like you kept working until you felt ready. And that's actually a follow-up to Ezekiel's first question is how did you know? Like, what were the signs for yourself when you were ready?
That is so tough. And I've read this statistic that said that men apply for jobs when they've satisfied 60% of the requirements, and women apply for jobs when they've satisfied 100% of them. And that I wish I could tell all the women, don't wait till you have 100%. Like these job postings, they're sort of like ideal scenarios, and you can't possibly know everything. And I didn't know everything when I applied for the job I'm in right now, and I'm doing a really good job, and I love it. But how do you know you're ready is so hard. Like I struggled with that a lot. And looking back now, having a job, knowing what I know and knowing what I knew then, I if I wanted to have a job earlier, I think I was ready a lot sooner than I thought I was ready. A little bit of that hindsight. Like I think I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry so much.
Okay. Um,
But I don't know how to say like there's as many languages almost as there are people learning them. Like I can't there isn't this like once you have these 5 skills, now you're ready. Or
right.
once you can build this certain thing, now you're ready. And it probably really, I mean, it really depends on the job you're going for. Like if you started learning a month ago and you know HTML and CSS, maybe you don't apply for senior web developer jobs where you're heading a team.
Yeah.
There's such a market for like there's such a demand for developers that you can find a junior developer job with a small amount of skills. I think if you're passionate, I think if you don't have like a CS degree and you are coming from a self-taught background, I think you have to probably prove yourself a little more. But if you're passionate about it and you walk in there with enthusiasm, and I've learned this, I think one thing that impressed people about me in my interviews was like, look at all the languages I've managed to teach myself. I have 3 kids, I have all these other things, and yet I've built these, projects, and I've learned all these languages. And so I think if you can walk in there with enthusiasm and be able to show the projects that you've built, I think, there's a lot of need for developers who can do something like that.
Yep. I'm hearing enthusiasm. I'm hearing persistence,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing curiosity. To throw it back to the beginning.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Speaking of resilience, from Sydney Schumann, what would you do when you just get stuck? for example, Sydney is finishing up build a front end app with React, and I think Sydney's stuck.
Well, I think there are a couple things you can do. And it's probably why are you stuck? Like, do you just not know the next step? Then you can reach out for help, reach out for in the Slack chats, like ask people, just try and find some help. If you're stuck because it's not making sense, maybe go back a little and relearn some stuff, try some, smaller projects and go forward. And if you're stuck because you don't like it, that's totally valid. Like, that is okay. I've reached that point. Like, I think I've taught myself like 15 or 20 programming languages at this point, but there was one in particular where I got stuck because I hated it. And that's okay. Like, nobody's forcing you to learn this. Like, if you just don't like it, that's fine. Like, I don't like Ruby on Rails. Like, I just don't
I wanted
like
to ask.
the one that I abandoned completely was Objective C. Like, I just did not like that. And I don't know why, but and then I was sitting there like, I don't have to finish this. Like, I don't have to do this. I'm just going to move on. So I think it kind of depends on why you're stuck. And if if you don't like it, just pick something else. Like, you don't have to, you know, injure yourself, trying to finish some course if it's just not for you. But if you really want to know, like, reach out for help. Like, there are lots of people who can help. I found my Slack. Well, I fell into a sort of I feel like a mentor role in that React class, and I liked helping people. Like, I really wanted to, help people work through those issues. There were a couple people who, I think, all New Year's Eve, it was right at the end of the class. I think the entire New Year's Eve I was up, I was watching the TV, but I was helping somebody get through their project.
Oh my
And
god.
it took a couple hours or something, but we'd go back and forth and, what do you think about this point? So there's lots of people out there that can help if that's why you're stuck.
Oh my gosh. New Year's
But
Eve.
but please feel free to walk away from something if you don't like it. Like, if there's so many languages out there, like that thing I was saying, like, find what you want to learn. If this just isn't an area that you want to learn from, there's so many other languages so many areas that you can go towards that isn't this one.
That's such killer advice. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Kate. What would you say? This is from Paulino636. What would you say are the top 3 mistakes that you see beginners making? Or the ones that you made when you were starting out?
Well, I am currently teaching my 15-year-old how to program. And so I can tell you a couple things from yesterday. One was syntax, like just he put an underscore instead of a dash or something. Like, please double check your work. That might be the answer to a lot of things. And that's one thing that I found when I was helping people in the React class was, you called it business here, but business is there. Like, it's a different name, or it's capitalized here, not there. Like, syntax is a thing. And the other one I'm trying to impress upon him is try and figure it out yourself. Like, he kept asking me, why isn't this working? And he's texting me. I'm like, I don't know. You have to look at it. Like, see if it makes sense to you. Like, and so don't give up too easily. Teaching yourself is a big task. And if you give up, why isn't this working? And then it turns out to be something very simple. Proofread your work, and I think that solving your own problems teaches you more than learning the right way in a book. If you make a mistake and you look at it and you play with it and then you figure it out, I think you really cemented something that maybe was a little fleeting when you read it in a book, and now you really know it once you've made them. So mistakes are great. I think mistakes are fabulous. Make the mistakes, learn how to read the error logs, and try and work it out. Like, making a mistake, everyone does that. It doesn't mean you're a bad programmer. But learning how to fix them, I think, is going to make you a much better programmer. And if you just wrote a perfect program every time, that's fine. But if you make mistakes and can solve them, that's a really good skill. I don't know if that answers the question, but
that absolutely answers the question. And I have one right now. It sounds like you teach the course at the high school. and you're working with your son right now, 15-year-old. How is it to see teenagers working with computer programming? Do you see any of sparks for what they can do in the future, or do you think it's just like another subject for them right now?
So this past time that I did the course, it was my second time doing it, and I was standing up in front of the class, and one of the kids walked in, and he's like, I've heard of your legend. And he was so excited because he'd heard from the year before that I did this course with them, and they loved it. And he was so excited to do it.
Oh, that's
And, I would see certain kids in there just like, really be paying attention and really be interested in what was going on. And, it's so cool to see the kids like, really love to do that and just be very interested and, whoa, what if I do this? And like walking around the room and seeing what they're doing and liking, like, oh, that's really neat how you did that. So yeah.
For any other parents who do watch this, Kate's advice, or from Kate, when do you think is the right time to introduce coding education to your kids?
I think if they're curious, teach them. My middle son, I think he was in second or third grade when I taught him Ruby. And he picked it up really well. I mean, he wasn't doing anything with it at that point, but he got it. He got the if statements. He understood like the logic, the loops, the kind of fundamentals of the language. And he was second or third grade. And I think he built his first website. He built one to store his recipes in fifth grade. So, just start with okay. I do work with kids. I headed up a Girls Who Code for the middle school club, the Girls Who Code Club. And if your young kid is interested in programming, I highly recommend getting a microbit. They're really, really fun. I wonder if can I get it? Okay. So this is a microbit. It's really, really cool. It's a tiny little microcontroller, and it has a bunch of LEDs on it, and it can make noises and move motors. It has a temperature sensor, and you program it with block programming. So the kids don't have to type anything. They don't have to come up with the code on their own. They just drag the loop block over, and then they put in 20 times, and then if button A is pressed, move that over. And this is a really great way to start kids with programming. I highly recommend. You can get this off Spark Fund for like $16, and it's a great way to get into physical computing. I love this thing so much.
Oh, that's so neat. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it honestly sounds like something fun for me to do.
I've built one. There's one I take camping with us, and if I press one button, it tells me the temperature, because I don't know, maybe it's super cold at night, and I want to know what the temperature is. And then there's one that has a little compass, and as you move it around, the light, a little LED blinks to show you what direction you're going in. And so I bring it camping. It's really cute. It's fun.
From Ashal Singhal, what's your philosophy on taking a break?
I think breaks are great. I think short-term breaks are necessary. I think when I get really stuck in something, I take a walk and I breathe deeply, or I take a bike ride and I get oxygen to my brain. Sometimes something is not making sense and I could stare at it all day and nothing's going to happen. And then I go for a walk, a little bit of exercise, and then I come back and I'm like, oh my God, the answer's right here. That was so easy. And there's also times when you need to do something else, like, walk away for a while. But I think that gets a little dangerous sometimes. Like, you can just let life overwhelm you. Like, don't take a break because you're just busy doing other things. If you really want to do it, do it. But if you want to take a break, go take a break. Refresh yourself. Like, learn how to bake or whatever, and then come back to it. Or, fix up your bike and go biking or whatever. Like, do something else and come back to it. I think it's helpful. And, nobody's forcing you to go down this path. So if you need a little minute, take a minute.
Fabulous. Thanks for that. Next question from Harjeet Kainth. For someone starting off, would you say that Codecademy is sufficient enough to learn web development? Or do you feel combining other materials such as textbooks, tutorials, and forums are also necessary?
I think if you can combine as much as you can, that is great. I think there's so many ways that people learn. I think Codecademy is really great for beginners. I think I love the interface. I love how, you learn something over here, you program it here, you see your results here, and once it's all working, you move on to the next page. I think that's great. If you read just a book, you don't know, like maybe you're not understanding it right. But with the online part of the interface of building the stuff online with Codecademy, you know that you got it right before you move on. I think that's so important. But I also think it's really important to connect with other people and go online, join the Slack chat, like get help from other people, help other people, like help other people with what you're learning. I think just combine whatever you can. But yes, I think Codecademy is a great resource when you're starting.
And the key takeaway there, and this is something like even myself working with Codecademy, I think is combine everything, find what works for you, and use everything to learn.
Yeah.
I echo that. Actually, speaking about connecting with people, another question from Junie. Did you disable or delete your social media accounts when you earnestly began not applying for jobs, but part of your job search?
No. No. If there was something on there that somebody found objectionable, like, and they didn't want to hire me for it, then fine. But, no.
Yeah,
I think I'm a pretty nice person, but if they didn't like something, or if I checked in somewhere, they didn't, fine, then that's not the place for me. But
yeah,
I keep, I like to keep my stuff fairly private anyway, but, I am who I am. I don't want to have to be someone else to fit in somewhere, So if that wasn't going to work out that way, then it wasn't going to work out.
that makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a lot of conversation about like what face to put forward. I really appreciate your honesty on that one. I think, I mean, of course, you know that I go through and I do a lot of research myself on like how are we preparing for jobs, and there is a lot of advice about making sure that your online presence is tied neatly in a bow. But I think that if it is representative of who you are, there's no reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to, especially now, having so many accounts and, just our online presence, our online footprint is so big. It's really hard to figure out what is everywhere, what's available everywhere, what's viewable everywhere. So, take it or leave it. This is who I am.
Yeah, I dig that. Okay. Well, I think that we're coming up toward the end here. Is there any last points or advice that you would want to share with the audience right now?
Well, I think the fact that you're here, the fact that you're watching videos like this, that's really good. Like, just learn from other people. Like, my path isn't going to be the same as your path. It isn't going to be the same as everyone else's path. But just keep doing what you're doing. Like, you're here, you're putting in the time, you're asking questions, you're learning what you can learn. That's really great. Learn algorithms if you're going to apply for a job. Learn algorithms, learn algorithms, learn algorithms. But, just I think, just showing up and being present and learning stuff and talking to people, I think that's a really great path to go down.
Just show up. That's what I'm taking.
Oh, and 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes is my thing. You know my 10-minute thing, right? Just 10 minutes a day. Like,
Oh,
if
right.
you are having a really hard time with something, just do it for 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day. If you are overwhelmed by the idea of like, what do I need to do to apply for a job? Just gather some articles, 10 minutes a day, look at those articles. And, if you can do something for 10 minutes a day, the next day it'll be so much easier because you just did it yesterday. It's easy to do something for 10 minutes. You're not going to die. You're not going to, like, nobody's going to starve because you were busy for 10 minutes. Like, just 10 minutes. If you have a really huge thing coming, like you just can't figure your way around it, just 10 minutes a day.
I love it. I hope that goes in Oprah magazine one day. Okay, Kate, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. This has been a lot of fun. You had some great questions. guys, like really. I dropped a feedback form in the chat. Please do take a moment to share the feedback. We want to create more of these for you, and we want to always make them better. Everything's about improving all of the time. So please do share what you thought about this and how you think um, you can keep getting the most out of these. I cannot thank Kate enough for taking the time out of your day, out of your new job. Um, Go celebrate the win that you wrote me about this morning. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that we were able to do this.
Thank you so much. This is really fun. Thank you.
Cool. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.